This is Dr. David Pomeroy, your host on ADHD Focus. I wanted to remind you that the show is not intended to be a recommendation for diagnosis or treatment of any condition for any specific person. Please consult your mental health professional or doctor managing your ADHD or mental health issues about any diagnosis or treatment-related information that you hear on the show. Refer your ADHD provider to the show if he or she would like more information. Welcome back. This is Dr. David Pomeroy, your host of ADHD Focus, the podcast with the goal of exploding the myth information about ADHD out there. Welcome back to round 2 of my discussion with Jeff Copper, ADHD coach and creator of Dig Coaching. Our discussion is about the basic elements of coping with ADHD, which you may be missing. Awareness is the key, not only becoming aware of the elements themselves, but also of how you may be ignoring them and not even aware of it. We all have many choices of where we can direct our attention. Don't let it be directed by forces outside yourself. Don't surrender your choices. Listen and learn.
So, if you don't, I want to kind of expand exercise to an area that I talk about more and more that's not talked about a lot. Now, I want to give credit to Brett Thornhill because he's the first time he said there's the non-med meds, right? There's meditation, exercise, diet, and sleep. And so far we talked about exercise, diet, and sleep. But one of the things that I do is I fold meditation into exercise. And the reason I do it is I've talked to all kinds of experts. And without a doubt, I have not had an expert yet say that mindfulness is not good for people with ADHD.
Oh, absolutely.
Majority of them actually say it's more difficult. But when I look at mindfulness, I don't look at it as this kind of Zen-like state. It's sitting there meditating on and focusing on your breath and knowing when your thoughts or emotions, like an extraneous thought comes to your mind and you catch it and you bring it back to your breath. That's a moment of practice. So I don't think it's a Zen-like thing. It's practicing noticing your attention and bringing it back to your intention on the breath. And there's the physicalness of breathing is really helpful. But it doesn't end there. If you really start listening to like Lydia Zalowski and stuff, there's the exercise of practicing the shift of attention, but then there's the shift of attitude. And this is where you sit down, and problems abound in our world, and we have a tendency to deal with it. If you have a flat tire, you've got to deal with it right now. If something good happens, you don't have to celebrate it now. So in Japanese psychology, they practice gratitude. It's like a Zumba class. I'm going to sit down, and I'm going to journal. I'm going to write down everything that I'm grateful for. And by sitting down and acknowledging, like, oh, my God, I bit into that peach. It was so good. Or that woman helped me when I was really struggling. You do that over a period of time, and now you're shifting your attitude. People with ADHD have a negative attitude. You want to shift that attitude by practicing this on a regular basis. And then the third part that I started bringing in recently is the shift of emotion. And we don't think about that very much because we are emotional beings, and ADHD is a challenge of self-regulation, and one of those is regulating your emotions. And more I'm having my clients practice emotional self-regulation. And in the United States, I loved it before the last election because if you were a Trump fan, I wanted you to go home and watch CNN News. And if you were a Biden fan, you had to go home and watch Fox News. And I tell people, notice when you're sitting there, feel that sensation in your body start to well, catch it, take a couple deep breaths, and start kind of calming your body down. I want you to practice this like an athlete practices so that when you're in day-to-day life, you can catch yourself. So there's the exercise, the physical exercise that we talked about, but these are mental exercises that are not talked about. So you want to practice shifting your attention. I'm practicing like an athlete practice shifting your attention, practice shifting your attitude, practice shifting your emotion. And with that, exercise is really a bigger piece. Now, remember what I said, practice and exercise is a repetitive, boring task. So these things that I've described are not necessarily easy to do, but to do it with somebody or to mindfully try to figure out a way to make this stuff happen, I think is really, really helpful.
I think there's the reward in even 2 minutes of sitting quietly and focusing on your breath, because you're learning to focus. And of course your breath is always with you. You don't have to find special equipment or whatever to do it. And there's certainly any number of ways you can do that. One book I'm reading recently, which I think is amazing, is called Meditation Interventions to Rewire Your Brain.
Mm-hmm.
And Jeff Tarrant, who wrote it, is a psychiatrist and also a neuroscientist. So he's looking at brainwave patterns and what types of meditation you can do that help with different places in the brain where these brain wave patterns aren't going helpful. With ADD, and actually it's somewhat paradoxical, the ADD brain is going too slowly.
Mm-hmm.
We need to catch up to other people in our thinking and processing. So there's more of what are called theta waves, which are kind of slow. You want more beta in there. If you do things that help with some of those areas that have too much of the theta, and he's measured it, looked at if you're doing focus exercise type things, you're going to increase the beta.
Yep.
If you've got depression, then almost the last thing you want to do is, okay, sit in one place and kind of think about your breathing. Those people need to be active, moving.
Mm-hmm.
So doing Tai Chi or Qigong, or even just walking and being absolutely mindful. I'm picking up my foot.
Yep.
My foot strikes the ground. You're moving as well as doing the mindfulness part.
Yep.
So there are different ways of doing the
so I want to,
but it's being consciously mindful. You're
Yep.
having to focus on something. You're having to shift your focus back to just your breath instead of thinking, oh, and I got to do this tomorrow,
Yep.
and such is coming up.
There's a great article that is being printed in the August 22 edition of Attention Magazine, written by Adam Coots. It's about the different ways of meditating and mindfulness. So what you're describing is if the idea of sitting and listening to your breath is you got you crawling out of your skin, this is a great article that really addresses a lot of what you described and a lot more, so you can find that form that's going to fit to your brain. So don't think you have to do it a certain way. And I offer that up as you go, hey, this is a great idea, but I don't like the meditation thing, but I need to be mindfulness. Again, go check out the article because it's chock full of just really clever ideas, and you just have to find the one that speaks to you.
One, and this is another from a neuroscientist, and her name is Adele Diamond. She's at the University of British Columbia, and has what I think this is brilliant, and exercise, something that kids can do, adults can do. You get a glass of water, maybe half full or 3/4 full, and you're holding the glass of water and you're walking in a circle, but you have to make sure you don't spill any water.
Brilliant.
So you're focusing on the water. You also have to keep walking on the line or on a circle, and your mind can't be somewhere else. You dump water all over yourself. Just putting a piece of crepe paper down straight on the floor, 10 feet.
So I got to translate that. That would mean I walk around a circle with a glass of wine, because Lord knows I'm not going to spill that.
Yep, there you go. There you go. And it's a little tricky. You're holding a glass.
That's right. That's right.
Wine at the base. So putting just a line of crepe paper down on the floor, for a child to walk that line 1 foot in front of the other is just as difficult neurologically as an adult walking a balance beam. And so that's an exercise. Yep, you have to be conscious of your foot moving in this one direction. And I guess this is a popular thing among kids. Okay, you pretend all around you is hot lava. So you don't want to fall into that. So I thought this was brilliant, just simple things, but you have to keep your mind there. It can't be somewhere else. And then you're learning the focus, you're learning shifting your attention away from whatever it is that's
that's coming up to being right there, right then.
Absolutely.
That's what the mindfulness is, being present right there.
Yep. So I think we've done a pretty good job because again, I like to use that non-meds because we talked about the meditation, the exercise, the diet, and sleep, and they're kind of like four pillars. If one's out of whack, that kind of impacts all the other ones, but if you can focus on all of them, that all comes together. There's another area that it's been interesting to me to notice is that I look at an emotion as a reflexive reaction. Now, this is just my way of looking at it. Imagine if you're going to fall reflexively, your arms reach out to catch yourself. If that doctor hits your knee, your leg swings out, and when we feel threatened, like threatened with our life, we go to fight, flight, or freeze, and it's a primitive state that's a protectionism thing. And one of the executive functions that we have that's real important is self-awareness. Another one is emotional self-regulation. And one of the things that I bring up when it comes to managing your ADHD is people with ADHD really struggle with self-awareness because of the emotional side. And the way I like to describe it is in order to be self-aware, it's very threatening because you've got to confront yourself. You've got to look at yourself like naked in the mirror. And a lot of times people with ADHD will resist it. They fight back instinctively. It's a reflexive reaction.
You don't like the feeling unsure of yourself. You don't know what's going to happen. That's
exactly.
Anxiety. Definitely bad things are going to happen. That's going to get you.
And it's a protectionism thing, but at the same time, it actually gets in the way because self-awareness is hugely important for people with ADHD. Because if you're not admitting it to yourself, you're acting like it's not there. It's kind of, the imposter syndrome is built on this. You don't want to be who you are. You're trying to be somebody else, which is incredibly exhausting. And the reason I'm bringing all this stuff is more and more in my work I begin to realize is that even not neurotypicals can come to you like in earnest. They really, really, really want to help you, but it feels threatening, and so many people with ADHD don't witness that, so reflexively they fight against it. And the reason I'm bringing this up is if you want to manage your ADHD, you've got these types of things, but you also got to learn to manage your emotions because they get in the way of your self-awareness. And like for me, the turn for me in my life was I've got dyslexia, spelling's difficult. I'm like, why am I spending so much time? It's impairing my life. I just don't care. I own the fact that I can't spell, and I let it go. Every once in a while I'll have somebody like, gets on me about it, and I'm like, listen, if that's all you got to worry about in your life, God love you. But a lot of what gets in the way is this, and I'm bringing this to your attention because ADHD is an executive function impairment. A huge predictor in success in life is self-awareness, but it's the emotional component of executive function that gets in the way. And if you can be mindful of this, is where like the emotional self-regulation I talked about before and the meditation is, you can be mindful of this, it can really be beneficial in helping you go forward and letting go of those types of things, which is the same thing as I have people say, that's easy, that's easy. My mom years ago said, don't say something's easy when you're not doing it, because you're not acknowledging how hard it is. You're not giving the respect it deserves. So I'll give you a chance to comment on this.
One thing is that emotions follow thoughts. So I can't make someone feel an emotion. I don't want to be that powerful or magic. But they have a thought about what I've said, and that brings up an emotion from what they remember in the past, one thing and another, and being aware that we do have a choice. It's difficult to learn. We've got this defense system in the amygdala in the brain, and that's right next to the memory center. So those two come together. Oh, this was a bad thing before. But we can learn how to deal with that in a different way. And we talk about self-awareness, there's actually a self-awareness center in the brain. Been aware of that. Well, where is that? That's up in the prefrontal cortex. Gee, that area affected by So we aren't aware of ourselves, and this is where the movement meditation. I had a number of years ago, when I was in med school, I saw this thing at a little cafe I used to eat dinner at, and it was Hatha yoga, and come to class. It was very informal. I thought, yeah,